I'm Herman Morris from Alpha One Tactical. Welcome to another episode of Firearms 101. Now that you're familiar with the two most common types of ammunition, their parts, and how they work, it's time to go over their naming conventions. Now, the way that cartridges are named is one of the most confusing aspects of firearms for beginners, so my goal here is to provide a solid jumping off point to those who have little to no background in this. A lot of people who don't know much about firearms and ammunition assume that the name of a cartridge tells one everything they need to know about that cartridge. It's just that they themselves don't happen to know how to decipher it. But the reality is that there are some things that we can learn about a cartridge from its name, but they're very limited. In order to actually know how a cartridge performs, one must handle it, shoot it, and or study a ballistics chart. But let's start with what we can know just by going off the name. To begin with, we need to know the two main ways that caliber is expressed. The American way and the European way for really the rest of the world. I'll spare you the history lesson here, but suffice it to say that cartridges that were invented in the US are generally expressed as a part of an inch, such as 22, 357, 44, etc., etc. This measurement refers to the diameter of the bullet at its widest point. Those cartridges that originated in Europe or in other parts of the world express the diameter of the bullet in millimeters, such as 9mm, 5.56, 7.62, etc. Again, all we're talking about here is the diameter of the bullet in the cartridge. This in and of itself does not tell you much about the performance of that bullet or even its size or mass, but we'll talk more about that in the next episode. As an aside, one of the few exceptions to this rule about naming calibers are calibers created in the US, such as the 6.8 SPC, that were designed to be military cartridges from the beginning, and as such are named in millimeters as required by NATO. So the first thing that you see in the name of a cartridge is the diameter of the bullet. What follows varies significantly. In American cartridges, it's common for the caliber to be followed by the original designer or manufacturer of the cartridge, such as 223 Remington or 40 Smith & Wesson. It can also denote that whether it's a Magnum cartridge, such as a 300 Winchester Magnum, or even the year that it was made, such as the 30-06 Springfield, which was introduced in 1906. In the case of the 30-30 Winchester, the second 30 stands for the standard load of 30 grains of powder in the case. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of variety here that can make things pretty confusing for the uninitiated. What further exacerbates this issue is the fact that cartridge names are often known by their acronyms or initialisms, such as the 300 RUM and the 270 WSM. There's no way for anyone to know what those stand for unless they look them up. The European cartridges, on the other hand, tend to be more straightforward and provide a little more information. While European cartridges often also include the name of the designer or manufacturer, the diameter of the bullet is usually followed by the length of the case, also in millimeters, such as 7.62 by 51. Knowing the length of the case, along with the diameter of the bullet, can at least give you an idea of the amount of powder behind it, which can point you, or could be a point of reference, especially if you already know the performance of some other cartridges with similar dimensions. But again, knowing just the name tells us very little. So in conclusion, the name of a cartridge will only tell you the diameter of the bullet and could include other information that may or may not shed light about its performance. So as I mentioned earlier, the only real way to know a cartridge is through experience and study. In the next episode, we'll briefly go over the factors that influence a cartridge's performance, also known as ballistics. Stay tuned for that.